Well, the White House announced this week it will no longer accept new DACA applications. The Obama-era program shields immigrants who come to the U.S. as children from deportation, and it's something President Trump has been working to abolish since his days on the campaign trail. Here to help us break down the legal side of this move for DACA recipients is immigration attorney Anders Mejer. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your show.
So we just had the President Trump, the White House, they are trying to block what's happening with DACA right now. Of course, they're trying to get it completely dissolved, removed, but the Supreme Court has said, no, not so much. Where does this leave folks now? What should they be concerned about and working on?
Let's start with a little background. DACA is protection from deportation and gives work authorization if you meet certain requirements. DACA holders can also request advance parole. It was instituted by President Barack Obama on August 15, 2012. On September 5, 2017, the Trump administration rescinded DACA in a memorandum issued by then Acting Secretary Elaine Duke. Following the rescission, multiple lawsuits were filed challenging the termination. The Supreme Court consolidated several cases and heard oral arguments on November 12, 2019. On June 18, 2020, less than 2 months ago, the Supreme Court blocked the government's attempt to terminate DACA and remanded the case.
What did it say? Well, it said, hey, your decision, we can review it. It also said, your decision, President Trump, to rescind the DACA policy doesn't make any sense for two fundamental reasons. One, you did not rely how this would impact the immigrants, communities, or the employers. There are things you could have done. You didn't think about it at all. Secondly, you didn't consider whether, DACA has two components. One is protection from deportation. Second is work authorization. You didn't consider whether you could remove one without the other. You just ended it without any consideration at all. And for that reason, it was what they call arbitrary and capricious. That's just a legal term to say there's no good reason to do what you did. So what the Supreme Court said is, hey, go and consider it. Give us a good reason. Follow the right process. And what did this administration do? They ignored it. Supreme Court said, follow the process. And they said, we're going to stop altogether. So and mind you, this was June 18, 2020. July 17th, District Court Judge Paul Grimm ordered the government to start accepting new policies, new DACA applications in line with the Supreme Court's decision. A week later, this is just last week, July 24th, the government's attorney said, we have not abided by that decision. Instead, we are putting all of these new applications on hold. 4 days later, July 28th, the acting Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Chad Wolfe, issues this memorandum saying we're going to reject all initial DACA applications. We're going to reject all advance parole applications from existing DACA holders unless they show exceptional circumstances. And advance parole, what that is just asking for permission to leave the U.S. and to come back legally. So if you have DACA, the regulations for DACA allow a DACA holder to say, hey, can I leave the country and come back? And if it's approved, they can. And the
so let me ask you really quickly. Let me interrupt you. Let me ask you really quickly. So if a DACA recipient had put in a renewal for put an application in for renewal under the previous term of the 2 years, and it was in the process when this decision was made, are they not allowed to renew for the 2 years, or is it going to get cut back to a year?
I would argue it should be for 2 years. But what is this administration going to do? It's really difficult to say. Based on what their actions in September 2017, my assumption is doesn't matter when you filed, anything after July 28th is going to get only a 1 year rather than 2.
So that's my biggest issue, frustration with all of this. And it's the same thing with the Affordable Care Act in this president. Where is the replacement? If there are issues, like there can be amendments made to current legislation, or there can be a better plan that's proposed, and they haven't done anything like that.
you see it on every department, across the board. The policies just don't make sense. In some ways, this administration is its own worst enemy. Supreme Court tells them you can eliminate this process. Just do it correctly. The Supreme Court did not say you can kill the existing program while you're considering whether or not to remove the program. It doesn't make any sense.
And that's how I imagine
will result in more lawsuits.
But I would imagine that given the jobless rate right now, if you've got a DACA recipient who is about to lose their, it's about to expire, and they're already trying to find a job, I mean, what is that going to do for the people that are in the country right now, then trying to find work? Are they going to be forced to go to their home countries?
Let's make it worse. Let's say some of these are frontline workers working in hospitals fighting the pandemic.
Yeah.
DACA is protection from deportation and employment authorization. So someone who's filing or who has expired or is about to expire, if it actually expires, it doesn't mean the next day they get deported. It might mean they might get picked up by ICE and they might be put into removal proceedings. That's a possibility, but that's a process. So let's make it a step further. Let's say the person already has an order of removal. That individual could then be deported relatively quickly.
Does this even impact how they're able to obtain Social Security numbers as well?
Yeah.
Yes and no. You ask an attorney the question. It's not answered directly. I apologize. The reason I say yes and no is if you already have DACA, that means you already have employment authorization. That means you already have a Social Security number. That number is yours for life. However, if you're one of the individuals that could file for DACA, either never did or you weren't 15 years old 3 years ago, you now are. So that individual, according to this policy, will not be accepted. USCIS will not consider that application, will deny it, in which case that individual won't get a Social Security number.
All right.
So much to this, and it's so sad to see. It's like one step forward, 3 steps back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've had a lot of uncertainty these last 4 years.
Tomorrow is another hearing in front of Judge Grimm on the Casa de Maryland case, 4th Circuit in Maryland. And that's the judge that was considering holding the government in contempt for not allowing new applications to be filed. It's going to be very interesting to see what his reaction is going to be tomorrow, because clearly this memo does not comport to his order.
Okay. Andres, thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure to see you guys.
Thank you.
Yes. To learn more, you can check him out. There's his website right there, Andres Mejer Law at law.com.